marketing today, especially for founders in founder-led companies, tech companies, B2B companies, any company really, can be boiled down to the founder and one unforgettable idea that the founder can be known for in the marketplace. But there's something about this one unforgettable idea that distinguishes it from other people, other marketing thought leaders who have talked about, the one thing, or, your purple cow, etc. This one unforgettable idea is buried inside of you. You talk about it every day, but you dismiss it as just normal, or as just, not non-extraordinary. Or you may not even know that you have this one unforgettable idea, but if somebody were to see this in you, kind of like reading the wine label and telling you what you are from the wine label and extracting something that was invisible to you, that could become your one unforgettable idea, your model, your framework, your methodology that you are known for. And when you are known for this almost sounds like personal brand building, because it is in a way. But if you are known for, if we can put your name next to the one thing, Johnny, Dr. Johnny is known as the something guy, or Mary is known as the something realtor or something founder, what have you. So there's that name next to the person, and that is what you're going to be known for. Okay, so what is this one unforgettable idea, right? So I talked about this as, so for example, with me, Fernando, the blank guy, right? So in my case, I want to be known for Fernando, the one unforgettable idea guy, right? Donald Miller, if you're in marketing and you know Donald Miller is called the StoryBrand guy. Joe Pulizzi is known as the godfather of content marketing, right? Jason Barnard is known as the Brand SERP guy. SERP meaning search engine results page guy, right? You know what all three of them do. And they solve, what they're known for solves a specific problem, right? So Donald Miller is known as the StoryBrand guy. And you know that you can go to Donald Miller if you're a large company and you wanted to hire him to do some consulting projects, or if you wanted to buy his book or a course of his, or get certified as a StoryBrand certified expert. You know that you are going to learn how to tell a company story on a website and throughout the marketing, because customers respond to storytelling. And you know that if you wanted to interview an expert on content marketing, that you can interview Joe Pulizzi. And then you know that if you wanted to learn the new type of SEO that is all about brand, entity, engine optimization, or generative engine optimization, you know that you can go to Jason Barnard and read all his books and hire him for your company, right? That's the association you want, right? So the one unforgettable idea is your framework, right? That's your method. That's your point of view. That's something that tells your market who you are before you even open your mouth, right? And this is what I think of. This is what I see as the new marketing, right? Even if you're a technical founder, maybe even especially if you're a technical founder, you don't want to stay hidden in the About Us page of your company and stay in the shadows. You actually want to be known for a particular methodology or framework or a new category that you've invented, and not just be the person who performed the role of the CTO, but you're the CEO instead, right? So who is this method for, right? So if we're talking about, building a personal brand and branding that person, branding yourself as the something person, right? Who would this be for? So I'm thinking company founders, right? So like I said, technical founders, maybe even not technical founders, but if you're the founder of a company these days, you really should carry out founder-led marketing, but in this very specific way that I'm telling you about, right? That you are associated with one idea, one unforgettable idea, which is usually a framework or a model. You could be also a high-value consultant, right? So if you want to distinguish yourself from the thousands of other consultants out there, you need to be known as the consultant that does this, or has this little flair, or maybe you have this persona so that you attract other people that also have the same persona, right? Similar culture. And then you can also even be a local tradesperson, right? So you could be owner of an HVAC company, or you could be an accountant. That's not a tradesperson, but that's kind of like, they're a consultant, right? They can help you with your books, but maybe you have a certain methodology. Maybe you have a certain way of doing things. Maybe you focus on a particular niche, but not just the niche, but there's a certain way that you handle the accounting for that niche. Maybe you pay specific attention to, how to reduce tax risks for lawyers, for example, right? But let's focus on technical founders for a little bit, because technical founders tend to talk in ways as if they're talking to other technical people. But for the market, that, they tend to, your eyes glaze over. If you're listening to a technical founder trying to explain something, it's sometimes very difficult to understand. And I know that because I was interviewing a technical founder recently, and I just couldn't understand what they were saying. It was going over my head, right? So especially if you're a technical founder, very brilliant, you're a genius, you have multiple PhDs, maybe you have some patents or patent pending stuff, but you need to ground it in a way that makes the market stand to attention, and that explains in a simple way a framework that solves their problem in a way that's never been solved before. So this is who I think needs this, right? But I'll tell you why you need this. I'll tell you why technical founders need to be known for this one unforgettable idea, and also how to excavate that one unforgettable idea. Because like I said before, that one unforgettable idea is buried inside of you. Maybe you talk about it. Maybe it's just something that you do by feeling, right? Or it's something that you just inherently know, but you don't know how to describe it, right? But it's in you as part of your DNA. And the question is just getting it out. So I'll explain that in a minute. Right. So how do you get your one unforgettable idea? This is not something that you just kind of come up with. It's not something that you hire a branding, messaging, and positioning firm to get, right? This is that thing that you take for granted. So for example, I've spoken about this example before about the marketer from the 1920s, 100 years ago now, Claude Hopkins, going and touring the Schlitz the Schlitz brewery up in Milwaukee, and the brewmaster's explaining to them exactly how they purify the water. And then he says, why don't you just talk about that? And they said, nah, everybody does that, right? That's their knowledge that they just take for granted, but nobody's been talking about that, right? So if you can get somebody within your company, maybe an outside person who knows how to ask you the right questions, who can ask you about your process, right? And this is a process that you do, but you dismiss. That's where you can get one of your one unforgettable ideas, right? And then, but there's another type of one unforgettable idea, which is something that you're not even conscious of, right? So this is what's called tacit knowledge. And this is where it gets very powerful, right? So there is a really famous story about a woman she was the first MBA ever hired by McKinsey Consulting back in the 1960s. I think this was 1963 at the Cleveland, Ohio office of McKinsey. And let me see, what was her name? I know what her name was. Let me see. Her name was Barbara Minto. Okay, so this was the very first woman MBA that McKinsey ever hired, like I said, in the Cleveland, Ohio office. And she started becoming famous within McKinsey because she took what the consultants, she took the reports that the consultants were writing. They kind of ended up being gobbledygook in a way. It's not that the consultants didn't know how to write. It's that the consultants didn't know how to organize the ideas. They were adept at doing the research, at observing things that were wrong with the companies that they were advising and the fix. And they knew why the fix, they knew why they had to recommend a certain strategy or a certain tactic or a certain strategic direction that their companies had to, but they just couldn't explain it the right way. And it's because they weren't organizing their ideas. They didn't know what they didn't know. And so what Barbara did is that she rewrote all the reports in a way that made them very comprehensible. She improved these reports, and she started getting people from far-flung McKinsey offices all over the United States, including Britain. In fact, she even moved to the UK office. And what she discovered, what she was doing, she started doing this thing without even knowing what she was doing. And then she actually analyzed herself, which is very rare. Usually a founder, and in this case, Barbara Minto was working for McKinsey, but she became a founder of her own consultancy. So in a way, this is a perfect example of a founder uncovering their own tacit knowledge, their own implicit knowledge. She didn't really know what she was doing in these reports that made them so good, how she was rewriting the reports from these McKinsey consultants that made them so powerful communication tools. From gobbledygook, confused ways of communicating the ideas that the consultants had. They were very sharp ideas, they just weren't communicated correctly, to then becoming these very compelling reports that made the companies that they were advising really take notice and apply the recommendations of the partners. She didn't know what she was doing until she did a self-analysis. And so people like Barbara Minto, people like Steve Jobs, there's really a few people out there who have the self-awareness and the empathy, or being able to step outside of themselves to go and analyze to try and uncover what is this tacit knowledge that I'm using. And so what she realized is she discovered that she was doing this thing that she later on called, and it's a methodology that McKinsey and other consultants use now, called the Minto pyramid. In fact, am I calling this correctly? Minto pyramid. The Minto pyramid principle. And the Minto pyramid principle is, I'll just explain it really quickly, is you first of all, instead of just trying to explain the context of an idea and explain the research and the findings and the problems, and then you give them the conclusion at the very end, what she did, and what she was doing with all these reports without even knowing it consciously, but she codified this in this Minto pyramid principle, was what she did was at the very top of the pyramid, she expressed, first of all, the conclusion. So instead of hiding the conclusion at the end, she put the conclusion and the recommendation at the very beginning, right? So this is what I'm doing with this video. I said, you need to become known for one unforgettable idea. And that one unforgettable idea is you already talk about it every day, but it's just buried inside you, right? And now I'm going to explain the rest of the idea, right? So you give the conclusion first, and then you explain in sets of three. So these are the three reasons why this is important. And then each one of the three reasons has three pillars themselves, research findings and reasons why each one of these pillars. So there ends up being kind of like maybe 9 points to make, right? So you have the conclusion, then you have 3 reasons why the conclusion, and then each of the 3 reasons has their own 3 reasons as to why that conclusion. Even though there might be 4 or 7 or 2, 3 is easier to understand. But anyway, what she did was that she realized she was unconsciously doing that with every report. And then she did her own self-analysis, which is very self-aware, and she codified this into the Minto pyramid principle, right? And finding that tacit knowledge in yourself, in the founder, is very powerful, right? And so what are the questions that you can ask of a founder, or that you can have somebody ask yourself of a founder to find out, to uncover that methodology, that new way of thinking, right? So suppose a founder has come up with a new product or service, and they're selling the product or service, but maybe it's, so for example, maybe it's just another AI product, right? Those are now becoming a dime a dozen. What does your AI product do? Oh, our AI product really helps you write content in your own voice. Yeah, so does about a dozen others, right? But there's something special about this, but the founder can't necessarily explain why it's important in a way that communicates with the public. right? So how do you get that out? How do you get that inherent knowledge that the founder has that they've poured into their product, right? So you might ask questions like, first of all, about how they see the market need, right? So this is where you ask a founder, or somebody asks you, the founder, about the market need. What was it that spurred you to come up with the product? So here's one question. Before you ever started the company, how were people dealing with this problem? Walk me through what that actually looked like for one specific person or company that you watched. Okay. Next question. What does everyone in this market believe about this problem that you think is wrong? And when you see competitors marketing or conference talk about the space, what makes you wince? What are they misunderstanding? What do customers say they want, and what do they actually need? Where's the gap? What's the real cost of this problem that never shows up on anyone's budget line? Who's paying it? If this problem never gets solved, what happens to these companies in 5 years? What quietly breaks? And why does this problem still exist? It's not new. Smart people have thrown money at it. What have they all been getting wrong? So this gets at the crux of the matter, right? And that's probably the single best question, this one that I just asked, because some smart people have thrown money at it, but you, or this founder, has found the solution, right? And then when they built the solution, so now this is where you're asking questions of the founder, or when somebody is asking you a question about the thing they built, the thing that you built, but without getting into the specific of the product, right? Because what you want to do with the one unforgettable idea is a methodology or a framework that you share with the public, right? And what it does is it positions your product as the product to prefer. But you don't want to pitch your product directly, because what you want to do is you want to start creating content. You want to become known for a concept that people get excited about, and you give them a concept that they feel like they could probably do themselves. And theoretically they could, but they could do it easier with your product. So this is where you ask them questions that kind of abstracts out the functionality and the approach that their new product created, but in a way that exposes a new framework, a new way of doing things, right? So tell me about the specific moment you realized this problem was solvable and nobody was solving it right. Where were you? What were you working on? What did you see in your previous job or project that gave you unfair insight into this problem? What did you have a front row seat to that outsiders never see, right? And I was actually asking a client of mine something very similar. And because this client of mine was in a specific financial services vertical, I'm not going to say which one, but his whole family had, his father had a company that dealt with this particular vertical, and he worked in this vertical, but as a technology guy, right? He wasn't a financial services guy. He was a technology guy working in this financial services area. And now he has specific insight into this now as an independent technology consultant to this type of financial services vertical. And this is where I was able to get some insights that he wasn't even able to, he didn't articulate in his own marketing. He couldn't even think about it as a marketing thing, a marketing advantage. But what he told me about was like, okay, that right there, that's a key insight, right? So what did you see in your previous job project that gave you unfair insight into this problem? What did you have a front row seat to that outsiders never see? So this is what my client had. He had the front row seat, not just at the jobs he worked at, but in the business that his family owned. Was there a moment you tried to solve it the normal way and watched it fail? What happened? When you first told people your idea, what pushback did you get? Who told you it wouldn't work, and what was their reasoning? Why were they wrong? What did you know to be true that you couldn't convince anyone else of at the time? Can you convince me of it now? And why you? What is it about your background that let you see this when others in the industry couldn't? Right. And then this is the next set of questions is very powerful. The methodology with the product removed, right? So this is where you need structured tricks, not just questions, ways of framing that, make it impossible to answer with a feature list. So forget your company exists. I come to you as a friend with this exact problem and I can't buy anything. I can only change how I work. What do you tell me to do step by step? if you were hired as a consultant to solve this for one company with no software, just you and a whiteboard for 6 months, what would you do first? And then what, right? So then you're asking them, and and this is the thing, if they gloss over any of these answers and they said, obviously, or, I just did this, what you want to do is you want to catch them saying things like, kind of dismissing things. Well, hold on a second. You said that was obvious. Tell me more about that. So that's the thing about interviewing a founder or anybody, right? Sometimes they'll just dismiss things as being just normal and as, because they just feel it. It's something that they feel. So you got to ask them, okay, so what happened there? Like, what were you thinking at that moment? Okay, tell me more about that. Why did you make that particular decision? What was it about that particular client situation that made you solve it this way? What has to be measured or made visible that currently isn't? What would change the moment someone could see it? Okay, so I could go on and on about that. I'll make these questions available in my newsletter article that I put out tomorrow being the 20th of August, right? So these are the questions that will uncover what you as the founder already have inside you, right? So that one unforgettable idea is not something that is external, that you have to invent, that you have to hire, a messaging and positioning company to uncover for you. It's something that's inherently part of you, and maybe you can get AI to interview you about it. Maybe you can get somebody within your company to interview you about it, a friend or a family member. This is what I do for founders, is I ask these questions to uncover what they already have, the knowledge they already have, right? So once you're able to uncover your one unforgettable idea, how do you name it? Okay. And so this is where a lot of people kind of go wrong with this, is they try to pick a clever name. Something that, sounds kind of, modern and appropriate for social media. No, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you want to come up with something functional, right? I helped a client of mine. In fact, I can mention this because this is already something that they came up with, right? Is they have a product that helps companies manage all their data across different clouds, like AWS, the Amazon cloud, Azure, the Microsoft cloud, the Oracle cloud, the Google cloud. There's these huge multi-billion-dollar companies that have their data in multiple clouds because they're global. And maybe Azure is stronger in the European Union, whereas AWS is stronger on the West Coast. And then the Oracle cloud is stronger, I don't know, up in Michigan or something, right? And they kind of did that by default. They kind of accidentally got lots of clouds. And so they're dealing with lots of clouds, and it's just difficult to manage data across different clouds because all the cloud providers, they want to keep everything in their own cloud, and then make it difficult for you to kind of work across the cloud. So if you have customer data, or if you have data and information that you want to make accessible globally, but maybe some is locked away in one cloud, the other cloud, it's very difficult to try and work. My client calls it swivel chair management, because you think about somebody, okay, I'm here in the Azure dashboard, and now I'm here in the Microsoft and the AWS dashboard, and I'm here in the Oracle swivel chair management. So he came up with a term. Their product helps companies see their databases across all the different clouds as if it's in one single place. They call it a single pane of glass, right? So they're able to bridge the gap of having all their data across all these different clouds. And they came up with a term called cloud convergence, right? So cloud convergence, that's a very practical name. That kind of describes what you're going to get. You're going to get the end result for the client, these large corporations, is that they're going to manage their data as if all the different clouds have converged, because their product allows them to do that. So that's their one unforgettable idea. And that's what we're actively promoting. We're actively doing this out in the marketplace. And what we're going to do now is we're going to help the founders become known as, I am so-and-so, the cloud convergence guy. Okay. So you got to make it functional. And what you want to do is you want to test it on social media, test it on sales calls, put your content in, watch how people react to this. See if people start to repeat it back to you, right? So if you come up with this one unforgettable idea, you name it in a way, you name your methodology or your approach or the end result that people get, see if they repeat it back to you eventually, right? Because that's the evidence that you have succeeded, is when other people start to use your name in the marketplace. Okay, so here's the next piece, which I think probably you're thinking about right now. Why should you do this kind of founder branding? Why not just focus on branding the company? Well, two reasons. Number one, because of the growth of social media and digital technologies, and especially AI especially has created this lack of trust with content out there that, we don't know what's real. We want something that's more authentic. So first of all, why the founder? Why do we want to brand you, the founder? Why do we want to build your personal brand and have you be known for a certain named methodology, right? And that name methodology is something that you already have. We're just exposing it, branding it, and associating it with your name. Because people want the founder, right? People want to see a face to a name. People don't want to deal with anonymous companies anymore. They want to see that authentic person, right? And if they can see an authentic person that has a specific methodology that solves their specific problem, even better. So, but the beautiful thing is this kind of founder branding transfers to your company, right? So this is, in a previous video, newsletter, I talked about the 5 maturity levels of the founder POV. The POV is that one unforgettable idea, level 1 to level 5. You really want to get to level 5, in which the founder POV, your POV as a founder, is fully integrated into the marketing of the company, right? So that even if you're leading with your brand, your personal brand, and the thing that you're known for, the one unforgettable idea that you're known for, your company gets the benefit. Okay. But number 2, and this is where it gets to be a must-have as opposed to a nice-to-have, is that now when it comes to search, you're not just going on Google to search things. You're going on Perplexity. You're going on ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, right? And the way these are going is that they're really focusing more on the authenticity of an idea and who it came from. So they're looking at personals. They're looking at personal brand. They're looking at, is this person credible, right? So a person can have credibility, not so much a company. And that's where, you've heard the framework EAT, EEAT, which is a framework that Google came up with that shows that content has to follow the EAT framework, right? Or not has to, but it's better if it follows the EAT framework. And what that means is EAT stands for, there's 2 E's. One is you have experience in the topic that you're writing about, or that you're creating content about. You have expertise in the area. So experience means you've been at this for a while. You're not just some Johnny come lately using ChatGPT or Claude to come up with this. You've been doing this your whole life, right? And so in the case of me with the one unforgettable idea, the one unforgettable idea is expressed through content, okay? It's expressed through, you have a framework, it's a way of differentiating your content. And I've been writing content since I was in college, right? And in content, and I remember one of the things that I learned when I was studying journalism at the University of Texas is you got to have that opening hook. You got to have the who, what, why, where, right? So that opening hook, that the lead, as they call it, is what gets your content paid attention to, right? And then in copywriting, when I started copywriting with Copy Blogger, you have the hook. What is the hook for this thing? What is that one differentiator for that piece of content that'll make people turn their head? And then Joe Pulizzi always talks about the tilt. The tilt is what makes your content different from everybody else's. So I've been building up to this my whole life, and now this is just the modern iteration of this, right? So I have experience in doing this, right? And then the other E is expertise, right? So what are the credentials? What have they written about? Have they written books on the topic, that shows their expertise? How can we prove that? And that's where, a founder has to have expertise, right? And if you can write a book about it, and talk on podcasts about it, even better, because that stuff is out there. It's third-party validation that you are a credible person to be talking about this topic, this one unforgettable idea, and all the derivatives from this one unforgettable idea. So, and then you have the A in EAT, which is authoritativeness. Are you an authority in the topic? Do people cite you, right? Do you get invited to speak at conferences about this? Do you get invited to be on podcasts about this? Have people written about you, about your methodology, about your books, or book if you have one, right? And then T is trustworthy. Do people, do the search engines, do the LLMs trust you? Do people trust you? And that just comes from everything that went before that. And then Jason Barnard, who I've been really getting into his work lately. Jason Barnard, and he personifies all that stuff because he's been writing about, the brand SERP optimization for years and years and years. But he added two other things. He now calls it NEAT. So there's the N at the beginning, and then there's an extra T at the end. So there's two T's. Then the N is notable. Is your content notable? Have you written about it? Have you repeat your particular methodology, do you have something different that you talk about that's different from everybody else? And do you talk about this everywhere you go, right? And then transparency. Is this something that people can verify? Can they see that what you're talking about is something that you have embodied and you're not just making this stuff up through your, help with the LLMs, okay? So this is the reason why you should be building your personal brand, because the answer engines, the generative engines, Google, Bing, Yandex, etc., they really look at the person and whether they're notable, experienced, they're experts, they're authoritative, they're trustworthy, and they're transparent, right? So what does it take for you to become known for your one unforgettable idea, right? So there's really three layers to this. Number one is you got to build your entity home. And this is what Jason Barnard talks about. So I'm borrowing content here. You should go look at Jason Barnard's work at Calicube, which is his company, KALICUBE.com, or jasonbarnard.com. Also, he has a website called the Brand SERP Guy. Is it the Brand SERP Guy? Is that it? SERP. Yeah, the brandserpguy.com. So he actually embodies everything that I'm talking about right here. Jason Barnard is known as the Brand SERP Guy. That is his one unforgettable idea. Okay. So go, if you want to learn more about this stuff, go to the Brand SERP Guy or Jason Barnard or Calicube to learn about this. So number one is you got to have your entity home. And your entity home is essentially your website for you personally, right? Not your company website. Now, your company website needs to validate everything you talk about on your personal website. I have labastida.com, but specifically labastida.com/about. And that's where you say, Fernando, this is where I say, in fact, I'll read what I say on my about page. You got to be very clear. There's a specific methodology for talking about stuff now so that you can get, because the SEO that's being done nowadays, which is also AEO and GEO, follows a specific approach. It's not keyword optimization anymore. It's entity optimization. So to explain what an entity is, I, as Fernando Labastida, I'm an entity as distinct from the other Fernando Labastida, who is a bullfighter in Mexico, right? So we are two different entities, even though we have the same name. And so right now I'm trying to train Google and ChatGPT, Claude, etc., that Fernando Labastida is a specific entity that has these beliefs, this methodology. I'm the founder of this specific company. I have this podcast. I have this newsletter, and these are all entities. Okay. These are all different things, but I want that my name to be associated with me as my entity. And there's a very specific way of writing about stuff on your entity homepage. So on labastida.com/about, it uses what's called the subject verb object structure, right? The subject is me in my case. The verb is what I do, and the object is for whom. So Fernando Lavacita is a marketing strategist, category designer, and author based in Austin, Texas. He coined the one unforgettable idea, the thing a founder does so naturally they've stopped noticing it's rare, and founded the Viral Genius Institute to excavate it and build it into the brand that buyers Google and ChatGPT cite. He is the author of Startup Book, the Viral Genius Playbook, and Nearshore Marketing. Right. So that kind of takes that structure of the SVO search, SVO subject, verb, object, and what I need to add in there is a little bit more about the founder, because I talk about, it says he coined the one unforgettable idea, the idea a founder does so naturally if it stopped noticing it's rare. I need to add technical founders because that's really who my target market is. But I talk about it in the rest of my bio, right? So the other thing too about the About Me page is not only is it are you supposed to have a very succinct description of who you are and what you do and for whom, which you also repeat on your LinkedIn profile, on your author profile, on Amazon if you have a book, etc. But then you tell your story. You have a bio, which again, this is the bio you're going to repeat everywhere because you want to train these engines about who you are. And then you have a quick facts, almost like a FAQ about who you are. That you're an author of these books, that you founded this company, you organized this event, you have this newsletter, you organize this conference, this meetup, and you point to all those things. And by pointing to them, by linking to them, all these things that are kind of randomly hanging around out there with your name gets associated with your entity. So now eventually what you're going to do is you're going to train Google, in this case, that all those other things hanging around out there that also gets shown up when you Google your name now can be associated to you, and Google can potentially build a brand SERP on you. And what a brand SERP is where there's pictures of, it's a knowledge panel, basically. So it's a knowledge panel. That's where you build your knowledge panel. Not guaranteed that it'll happen, but if you do everything that Jason Barnard talks about here, then you're going to do that, right? So that's the number one thing that you do to build your one unforgettable idea out there, is you talk about it on your entity home, which is the website with your name on it. In my case, lavastita.com/about. And you talk about it in your podcast, in your writings, in your book. And then you talk about it on other people's podcasts, and you talk about it in your speeches, right? These are ways of getting third-party mentions, right? So if somebody interviews you and you talk about this one unforgettable idea that you have in the exact same way that you talk about it on your homepage, and you make sure to say, hey, could you put this in the show notes like this? So that's going to be somebody with a podcast on their podcast website or podcast home pointing back to you. And then when you go speak at a conference, you give them your bio. It's the same one that you put on your entity home. And that's going to consolidate, that's going to reinforce, that's third party validation. And that's what, that's part of like the authoritativeness and the whole EAT thing. It's not just what you say about yourself, it's what others say about you. Then you can maybe do press releases. But then if somebody all of a sudden spontaneously talks about you, like if somebody reviews your book, if you publish a book about this and it's really good, and a reviewer publishes a review of their book on their blog or their magazine or whatever, that's great. So the entity home. 2, your body of work. I've already talked about your body of work, but I think you should have a book. If you want to be known for something, you can have a book. You can either write it yourself. I write my own books, or you can get somebody to help you, a ghostwriter. Have your own show. You have your podcast, your video channel, the content that you create, or you don't even have to create your own content. You can just get somebody to interview you, and the interview gets turned into a cascade of content through AI. And as long as your AI is tweaked and seasoned to sound like you, to sound like your voice, and then you humanly edit it so that you can get rid of the, what is it called now? The Claude watermark that's happening, then you're good to go, right? And I'll get into I'll talk about the Claude watermark in another episode, right? So that's a very interesting topic. And then 3, third-party proof, right? So speaking, podcasts, press, right? And then what you want to do is you want to have a consistent production of this, right? So Jason Barnard has been doing this for 13 years. Joe Pulizzi has been talking about content marketing since early 2000. Donald Miller has been talking about StoryBrand for years and years and years. This is not this is not a quickie solution. This is something that you got to do for the long haul. You want to become known for this. Okay. So here's what I want you to do this week. So go answer one question. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. What I want you to do is to ask yourself these questions. Give your AI the list of questions that I just told you, and I'm going to put them in my newsletter. If you go to newsletter.viralgeniusinstitute.com, you'll see this particular episode and this particular newsletter in there, and you'll see the list of questions. And then go and get the AI to ask you these questions, and you type in the answers to these questions, and then at the very end, ask the AI to tell you what unique patterns it noticed with what your answers were, and if it can come up with a name for a methodology, a framework, or a category, and then write to me and tell me what you found. And so thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'll see you in the next video.